Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, Brady from Stats Diggers. Today, we're going to talk about UFC Vegas 103, Manel Kape versus Asu Almabayev. And my friends, it's going down this Saturday night live at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. You got the man who a lot of people consider to be possibly the uncrowned champ, maybe one of the best flyweights, if not the best flyweight on planet Earth, taking on maybe the dark horse in Asu Almabayev. So this is an incredible main event. Welcome to Half the Battle, Brady.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dan. Big fan, been watching you for a while now, so it's cool to be on and chop up some fights with you. And yeah, I think it's a good card, dude. I mean, ever since the cursed gloves are no longer, looks like we're getting violence, and I think back in the Apex here, it's going to be no different this week.
Yeah, and I need the old gloves from Manel Kape. So I'm glad you brought that up. And without further ado, let's get down to business, because in that main event, we got Manel Kape, he's 20-7, taking on Asu Almabayev, who's 21-2. Currently, they got it. Manel minus 220. The comeback on Asu Almabayev is plus 185. Brady, the original matchup was Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval, and that was definitely a number one contender fight. I thought that was an incredible matchup. And actually, coming from me, who I was one of the few, not to brag, just to state facts, that bet on Brandon Royval at plus 200 something odds against Tyra, who everyone was touting to be the next champion of the division. The thing is, I'm the guy that's been touting Manel Kape to be the future champion of the division, and I was going to go big on Manel Kape against Brandon Royval. I thought that was an incredible matchup for him. When this one got announced, at first, I was like, damn, Asu's like plus 210. At the time he was. Now he's plus 185. Now he's plus 185. But at the time, I was like, damn, Asu at plus 210. Like, I love Kape, but, sometimes he doesn't pull the trigger. Sometimes he fucks around. Like, maybe there's some value here. And when it came time to watching the tape, man, it further cemented my thoughts that Manel Kape is a future world champion, man. Like, the only fights I watched in preparation for this were his last two fights versus Mokaev and versus Bruno Silva. And let's talk about the Mokaev fight, right? Because everyone remembers it as the flyweight version of Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis, right? One of the worst fights we've ever seen. And while I have immense frustration with certain things that Kape did, we'll get into it, I also, Brady, hear me out. I also walked out a little impressed with certain things that Kape did in that fight. Now, I know before I explain myself, someone's going to be like, how could you be impressed when literally nothing happened in that fight? Okay, all right, hear me out, guys. Hear me out. Things did happen. And here's what I took away. Look at those sprawls in round 3 by Manel Kape. I was like, damn, that is a seriously athletic sprawl. He's very hard to hold down. And in that first round, when he got taken down, he starts to roll for a knee bar, right? And then Mokaev starts to pants him a little bit. So, that's completely against the rules. Should have been deducted a point, but that's neither here nor there. The ref stands them up, gives, Mokaev a stern warning, like, don't do some shit like that. From then on out, it was pretty hard to take Kape down. And let's fast forward to round 3, because when he got taken down again, he rolled for that same knee bar attack. And this time it was looking like, damn, like you're scrambling like that against a guy like Mokaev, because for Kape, who he's known for his knockout power, his speed, et cetera, he'd always been criticized because in the past in Japan, I know you remember that Sasaki fight, right? Or even the first Kai Asakura fight, right? So Manel Kape's come a long way on the mat. He's now actually a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And the fact that he was able to set up those little transitions on the ground with a guy like Mokaev not get held down, that is what was impressive to me. Now, Brady, guess what wasn't impressive to me? The fact that I had to wait 4.5 minutes for this dude to throw a punch in the first round. The fact that in round 3, you get back up from the takedown. You got this guy behind the black line. He's got nowhere to go. You cut off the cage. Go tee off on him. And Manel refused to let his hands go. I was like, no, Manel. And even with that said, Brady, it was still a close fight that could have gone either way. And it was a 3-round fight. Who knows how it would have gone in 5 rounds? I'm not saying he would have won, he would have lost. I'm just saying, despite how, unaesthetically pleasing it is to watch that fight, it was still 2 really high level guys. And I learned a bit about Kape in there, because here against Asu, the thing about this kid Asu, he might not have the, the fast twitch, the natural gifts of a guy like Manel Kape, but the kid's got a big heart on him. The kid's got a motor. The kid will go for it. He doesn't get discouraged. He's a winner. He imposes himself. So I really appreciate that quality in him. The thing about it is now that Cap, because when Cap first came into the UFC, people got to understand this. This dude was fighting with fucking tennis shoes on in Japan with a ring. The ref's got an earpiece in his ear. It's a completely different league. Now he's coming in the UFC. First few fights had to get used to fighting without shoes. You saw kind of those, I mean, he was still competitive with Pantoja. He arguably beat Nicolau, but it wasn't the Cap that we had come to expect. But you look at that last performance against Bruno Bulldog, and that was like, oh shit, this guy really is a future world champion. So to me, it's just about, I've said this before and I'll say it again, Brady. Manel Kape's biggest weakness is Manel Kape. If this guy just gets out of his own way and does his thing, I think he's going to style on Asu. But if he comes out and decides not to throw, the threat of the takedown is too much to let his hands go, he's too patient, I'm going to be really fucking pissed off. But I think that he's at the point now. You've paid those dues, kids. You crushed the grapes. It's time to drink the wine and get your title shot. So all respect to Asu. I think he's a dog. I think he's got a bright future. I just simply think right now is Manel Kape's time. And for that reason, Brady, I'm picking him to win this fight.
Yeah, so it's interesting, man. Manel Kape made his debut against Pantoja and then fought Nicolau the fight after. I actually faded Manel Kape in both those fights, and the reason being is because, yeah, you look outside the UFC and he has been taken down, has been controlled, has been subbed, but in both the Nicolau and Pantoja fight, both guys weren't really able to take him down nor hold him down. I don't think Pantoja even landed a takedown in that fight. And I think the Makayev fight was a great look in terms of how we need Kape to fight this fight here, and that's keeping it on the feet. I think he's really shored up that hole in his game, which was the takedown defense, the ability to get up, the grappling. Now he's a black belt. Now his scrambling abilities next level, his takedown defense is next level. So if all that holds up here, and we get a fight that does take place on the feet, you have to absolutely favor Manel Kape in this one. So, but yeah, like you said, the one thing holding me back from going all in on Kape here is the fact that sometimes he doesn't show up, to be honest. Like sometimes he just goes in there and just doesn't do anything. But I feel like he absolutely has all the tools to not only win this fight, but potentially even be champion in the very near future. As long as he can put it together, show some urgency in there, he should be able to win this fight, I think, quite easily. I just really struggle to see Almabaev taking down and holding down Manel here across 25 minutes. I don't think he's going to sub him. I think this fight primarily takes place on the feet, and when it does, there should be a big skill gap when it comes to the striking. So I'm right there with you. It should be Manel getting it done. Should be pretty handily as long as he shows up, motivated, ready to go with some urgency in there. I think he should win this pretty easy, to be honest.
Yeah, and when you talk about a guy like Manel, because you're talking about him showing up or not showing up, and the thing about it is, man, he's one of these guys that's so confident that no matter what's happening in the fight, in his head, he believes that he's ahead at all times. He believes he's winning at all times. So that's why, like, dude, the funniest thing I saw before the Bruno Silva fight, the reporters were like, you're coming off a loss. He's like, I didn't lose that fight. I'm still on a win streak. You know what I mean? Like, that's this guy's confidence now. And also, one last thing, I think 5 rounds is kind of advantageous to Kape. Reason being, I know people say stuff like, oh, but Asu's actually been 5 and Kape hasn't. Guys, that kind of analysis is just asinine and are not, that doesn't mean shit. Like, have you seen a reason to believe that Kape is going to slow down? His last 3rd round looked incredible. All his 3rd rounds are fine. So why am I all of a sudden going to think that because he hasn't been to the 4th and 5th yet, that now all of a sudden he's going to fall off a cliff? I don't see that being the case. If anything, I think Asu might be the one that falls off a cliff. Reason being is he works so damn hard. This guy gives max effort. And let's talk about another thing. Okay, about Asu. One thing I really got to give him credit for, and I'd be really remiss if I didn't mention this. So let's talk about that Nicolau fight, right? First round is probably the worst round you've ever seen in your life. They don't do anything. But the fight really started to heat up around the 7-minute mark when Nicolau had Asu in a serious guillotine choke. I'm talking a serious guillotine choke where it's not just fully locked in, but Buddy's pants are falling off too. So now you're dealing with 2 different battles. And the fact that he didn't tap out to that shows me the kind of heart this guy has. Show me that even if he takes a setback here, he's going to come back to have a very, very bright future. And then he escapes that guillotine. And then the third round, it's 1-1. You got to make a statement here, kid. You got to show that you really want this. He goes out there and floors Nicolau. So I was happy about that. But man, I do think the 5 rounds favors Kape, because if you need to kind of take the first round off to feel him out, no big deal. Make your reads, do what you got to do. You got to Peter Yan it up. That's fine. Now you got 2 extra rounds to work with. And if your style is predicated on, chaining multiple takedown attempts, that shit's taxing, Brady. That shit makes you tired. And now we're talking about the 4th and 5th round. Manel Kape is standing right in front of you when you're gassed out beyond belief. Now you're taking some sloppy shots. Now you're winging big overhands that aren't set up. I could see a late finish too. So I still got Kape, but I just had to show Asu some respect for the immense heart he showed against Nicolau, escaping that guillotine.
Yeah,
Now,
Almabaev's yep.
Oh no, please go ahead.
I was just saying, Almabaev, I think he's good, man. I think he's really good. I think he's going to win a lot of fights in the UFC. I just feel like this fight is too little, too soon for him.
I feel you. Now, co-main event of the evening in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Esteban Ribovics, he's 14-1, taking on Nasrat Haqparast, who's 17-5. Currently, they got a Esteban Ribovics -280. The comeback on Nasrat is +240. Now, allegedly, there was another fight that was called the co-main event, but on Half the Battle, we don't recognize Cody Brundage as a co-main event fighter, and Esteban Ribovics just put on one of the best fights of the year last year and one of the best fights of all time. He's the co-main event. And yeah, you can't tell me any differently. It's like that little meme, change my mind. You won't. So we'll talk about the Brundage fight after this, but we are not going to disrespect Ribovics and act like he is not the people's co-main event in this fight. Now, as far as how these two match up, firstly, let's talk about that Ribovics and Zellhuber fight. So the reason that that's considered the fight of the year, one of the best fights of all time, is because of that third round. Don't get me wrong. The first 2 rounds were fantastic, but that third round was so much drama, man, because it's 1-1 going to the third, right? Daniel Zellhuber drops Ribovics with an elbow to start off the third round. And then Ribovics starts to come back on strong. He lands this big right hand that had Zellhuber wobbling all over the place. And then you saw like an 100 strike combo by Ribovics there, man.
Yeah, I think it might have been 150.
Dude, that's the kind of stuff that the fans love to see. And if you watch that whole fight, the commentators were saying, like, at times in the second round, oh, maybe Ribovics is slowing down now, because he was coming out hard out the gate. Like, he was right in Daniel Zellhuber's face. And you have to be when you're fighting a guy that's that tall, that has that kind of reach advantage. And not to mention, Ribovics is Argentinian. You know what that means? That means that this guy does not take no for an answer. This guy is as stubborn as they come, and he's willing to fight to the bitter end, win, lose, or draw. So you love that about him. Now, on the other side with Nasrat, he's a young UFC vet, man. This guy's got a missile in his left hand, and he always has, man. When that left hand lands, there's a certain impact it has, a certain crack, a certain look on his opponent's faces. Like, it's like that scene in Russia, or like, which one of y'all hit me with that? Like, that's how people react when they get hit by that Nasrat left hand. But the thing about it is, we have a nice little sample size of Nasrat in these blood and guts type fights, which he's been having lately with, the Landon Quinones, with Jared Gordon and whatnot. And one thing that's never changed about Nasrat is that when you really bring the fight to him, when you really pressure him, I mean, don't get me wrong, you leave openings, that left hand is always there to do damage. But I feel like Nasrat doesn't do as well in these dog fights. I feel like he doesn't like being pressured as much. And one thing about Esteban, he's going to go out there and make this the kind of dog fight where either you die or I die. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I just -280 is the issue I have. That's like, how am I getting to -280 here? I'm not. Again, I'll pick him to win. I think he's got more upside. But like, when you're dealing with a seasoned vet like Haqparast, who's been in the UFC since he was literally just a kid, wasn't he like, what, 19 to 21 or some shit when he made that debut against Marcin Held? Like, he was just a kid, and to come along the way to do what he's done so far, it's very impressive. But how do you think these two match up?
Yeah, like that's hilarious. Yeah, this is the co-main event. This is absolutely the co-main event. And yeah, man, I really like Ribovics as a fighter. The only knock I'll give on Ribovics is the takedown defense. Like, go watch really any of his fights. I know that's, his only loss against Rajabov, he got taken down 11 times, but even outside the UFC, he's getting taken down and just willingly getting taken down. But in this matchup, he's going against Haqparast, who's not going to take him down, right? Ribovics is going to get the fight he wants. Both guys are going to get the fight they want, and that's going to be a fight that takes place on the feet here. And like you said, I think this is going to be an absolute dogfight. And I was watching the Jared Gordon Haqparast fight, and I wasn't liking what I was seeing from Haqparast. Like, I had a bet on Jared Gordon by decision, which obviously didn't hit, but I had that bet on Gordon by decision, and I thought Gordon was about to finish him in the second round. I did not like how Haqparast was reacting to punches. He was kind of running away a little bit. It looked like Gordon was on his way to potentially breaking Haqparast in that second round. Man, if that happens against Ribovics, I think he's in big trouble. I think the more this fight goes on, I think the pressure, the volume, the power, the cardio Ribovics is really going to take a toll on Haqparast. And I know Haqparast is durable, but I just think Ribovics is going to just put it on him here. So I like Ribovics here. I think Ribovics can even be the second person to knock out Haqparast. Like I said, he's durable. Only knockout loss comes to Drew Dober, but it's going to be tough to eat, upwards of 150 to almost 200 significant strikes to the chin here. So I like Ribovics as well. Minus 280, it does feel very disrespectful. And Haqparast is a good fighter. He's a good striker, has a lot of power in his own right. I think this has fight of the night written all over it, but I'm going Ribovics, and I think he can actually get a late stoppage here in this one.
You ready for a hot take?
Yep.
So I wish it was Tuesday so we could call it Hot Take Tuesday, but we can't get rid of Taco Tuesday. So we keep Taco Tuesday. Let's call it Hot Take Wednesday. I think that the Nasrat versus Jared Gordon decision was worse than the Patty versus Jared Gordon decision. Change my mind. Come at me in the comments. I believe that. I'll go to the grave with that. I truly believe. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I still think Jared, of course, had an argument to win the Patty fight, but when that was going to the scorecards and like in my group chat or with my friends at home, I don't even remember. It's been a while, but I was like, this shit could go either way. Whereas with Nasrat and Jared, I was like pretty confident Jared was about to get his arm raised, and then nope. So yeah. So my hot take, I think that Jared versus Nasrat is a worse decision than Jared versus Patty. Come at me. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Cody Brundage. He's 10-6, but he is not actually 10-6. Let me explain what I mean here by this. Number one, he did not beat Jacob Malkoun. So let's take the 10 away, turn that into a 9. Number two, he definitely lost to Abdul Razak Al Hassan. So let's change that 6 to a 7, and then let's also change that 7 to an 8 because he lost to Malkoun. So I believe we're at 9-8 as a pro, right? So that's not 10-6, that's 9-8. Listen, you can't sit here like people will be like, oh, but you beat Malkoun. It's like, how many times are you going to rely on this guy to quit to get a win, man? It's unreal. But anyways, Julian Marquez is now listen to this. Julian Marquez is 9-5. Bro, this fight should be 9-8 versus 9-5, but it says 10-6. Okay, anyways, Marquez minus 135. The comeback on Brundage is plus 115. We can talk about skills. We can talk about. I don't want to talk about anything like that. There's only one thing I want to talk about. Julian Marquez has something that Cody Brundage doesn't. Heart, dog, will to win. Yeah, like Cody Brundage is a martial artist. Yeah, he's got techniques. I mean, he's knocked people out before. He's taken people down before. It's like, it's not like he doesn't have like fighting skills. That's like understood. Yeah, he can fight. He's in the UFC. But when it comes down to an actual fight, I don't mean a front run. I mean a fight. This guy will never win a fight, or he has to dig deep. Actually, I say that. What about the Dalcha fight? But then again, it's like Dalcha was piecing him up and then dove head first into a guillotine. So it's not like, yeah. So I'm not a Brundage guy. I never have been. I never will be. I know Julian Marquez is coming off not the best looks, but then again, you're standing and banging with RoboCop. You were standing and banging with Marc-Andre Barrio. Like, two things that Cody Brundage would never do. And this whole Cody Brundage quitting thing isn't something that just happened in the Razak fight, in the Malkoon fight. Some of y'all don't remember what happened on Contender Series when he fought William Knight. Goes out there, takes down William Knight right away in that first round. But as soon as William Knight got back up, all the fight immediately left Cody Brundage. And yeah, and the wins he's had, man, like I said, the Dalcha fight, he's getting absolutely lit up. Dalcha dives headfirst into a guillotine. The Zach Reese fight, it's like, you know, Buddy has a fully locked in triangle. You picked him up and slammed him. He got knocked out from the slam. It's like, I don't like discrediting fighters by saying meme this, meme that, but like, bro, show me Cody Brundage winning a fully processed fight. Show me Cody Brundage overcoming adversity. Show me Cody Brundage showing any kind of heart whatsoever. So yeah, if Cody Brundage doesn't have a moment, Julian Marquez is winning this fight. I know Julian hasn't looked good, but Julian is a fighter. Julian is a dog. And if Julian is still conscious, I mean, do you think Cody Brundage has the same kind of hands as RoboCop or who's the other guy I mentioned that knocked out Marquez? Oh, Mark Andre? No, yeah. Absolutely not. I mean, you know, to knock someone out, you have to actually let your hands go, right? Like, so, and people will be like, oh, but he knocked out Trayshawn Gore. Guys, what was Trayshawn Gore's record when they fought? Wasn't Trayshawn like only 3-2 at the time? Like, he was just like literally getting into the UFC. 3-2, my man. Like, okay, great. You're supposed to handle guys like that. And that wasn't even smooth sailing either. Yeah. This is Cody Brundage's last UFC fight. I got Julian Marquez by knockout, by anaconda, by guillotine, by whatever he wants. Overcome a little. I don't even know if he has to overcome any adversity. Just go out there and fight. And I think you got this. Give me Julian Marquez to rebound. And if Cody Brundage wants to come to the NFC, we'd love to test some of our up-and-coming prospects against the UFC vet. I got Julian Marquez.
Yeah, when I broke this down on my prediction video, I almost had a stroke trying to pick a winner. I don't really want to pick either one of these guys, but you brought up one key thing that I think is very important to mention in this fight, and that is the word heart. One guy has a lot of heart. He might not have the skill. He might not have the chin anymore. I'm not really sure what he's that great at, but Marquez has a ton of heart, and then one guy has just no heart, man. I mean, Cody Brundage, good hammer, but just the worst nail imaginable. I mean, we see it time and time again. Anytime this guy ends up on bottom, the fight is over shortly after. Anytime he's not able to get his game going, the fight is over shortly after. So the way I'm seeing this fight play out is, I think, you know, early on, Cody Brundage is going to go out there and try to take off Marquez's head. And if he does, he does. But if he doesn't, if he has to battle any adversity whatsoever, I think he's getting finished here as well. I think Marquez can knock him out. I could see a club and sub here. I could see Marquez hitting him with something big, Brundage shooting in and getting his neck snatched up. And then, like I said, anytime Brundage has ended up off of his back, it's looked very, very bad. Like we saw Mikel Olazechuk get on top of him, land a couple shots, and that was that. So I like Marquez here to win.
Dumas?
Oh, gosh, yeah, bad. Terrible. That was the worst fight I've ever seen in my entire life. And if Dumas was any good at all, he would have finished Brundage there. So, yeah, this is Marquez for me.
But Dumas is a
fraud?
No, dumbass. Okay. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I like Marquez here. I'm gonna see where this line goes, man. Like if Marquez gets the plus money, I might be forced to fade Cody Brundage one last time. But yeah, it's a disgusting fight.
Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between William Gomis. He's 14-2, taking on Hyder Amil, who's 10-0. Currently, they got it. William Gomis minus 205. The comeback on Hyder Amil is plus 175. Brady, I've been going first on all these. It's your turn, my man. I mean, you know, you got the long, you know, kind of play it safe guy, but you have to be careful, you know, fading these guys. And you got Amil, who's an absolute dog. I feel like the matchmakers are like, this guy's going to make Gomis fight, but they might have also thought Brito was going to make him fight too. What do you think?
Oh, I hate this fight and I love this fight. I hate it because I'm worried that this might turn into a William Gomis fight. And William Gomis has to be the most boring fighter I've ever seen in my entire life. He's so
hold on. Were you around in the John Fitch days?
This guy might be, Gomis might be more boring, man. I mean, he throws nothing. Throws absolutely nothing. With that said, though, I think Gomi is a really good, skilled fighter. I think the skills are there, but he's so defensively sound, and I think he's like too defensively sound. 71% strike and defense slows the fight way down. So you have Gomi who just split decision merch. I mean, I think half his wins in the UFC are split decisions. And then he's going against Hyder Amil, who Hyder Amil is the complete opposite. Whereas Hyder Amil doesn't have probably the same skills as a William Gomi. He has dog in him. He wants to go in there. He wants to try to get you out of there. He throws a ton of volume. Like I was looking through Hyder Amil's first couple of fights in the UFC. This guy landed 79 significant strikes in the first 7 minutes of the fight against Fernie Garcia. He landed 42 significant strikes in about a minute against Jung Young Lee. William Gomi barely lands 43 strikes in an entire 15 minutes. So I'm looking at this fight, and it's like Hyder Amil's a pretty big dog. William Gomi, like I said, probably has more skill here, but if Hyder Amil can make this a dog fight, if he can go out there and, close the distance, put the pressure on, just land more volume, land some big shots, mix in the occasional takedown, I think this fight could end up being fairly close, like most William Gomi fights are. So I'm leaning the dog here in Hyder Amil. I just think that worst case scenario, it's a split decision win either way. But I also feel like Amil could potentially break Gomi. We've seen Gomi getting to put in some bad spots in some of his fights. The Marshall fight got put in some bad spots. The what was that bum's name that he fought? Jarno Aaron's fight got put in some bad spots, got put into a deep submission. So I feel like I got to go with the dog here. I struggle to see William Gomi really looking minus 205 against anybody. So I like the dog in Amil.
Yeah, so this is gonna be our first dissension on the card. I'll tell you why. Listen, so you're bringing up how many strikes he landed against Fernie Garcia. I mean, you know what Gomi would do to Fernie Garcia? I promise it wouldn't be a split decision. I promise you that. I promise he would not run away from Fernie Garcia. I promise you that. But you know that William Gomi, he's got more finishes on his record than decisions. Now, here's the thing, Brady. One thing we got to understand is that Gomi came into the UFC at like 24, right? So you got to get your feet wet. You got to deal with the nerves. You got to feel like you're maturing. Now he's like 27. So I feel like now we're going to start to see some better performances. And the only people to ever beat him are legit as fuck. The Salhadin Parnesi guy, I apologize for butchering his name, but a lot of people think that's one of the best guys outside the UFC. And then Morgan Charrier, he's in the UFC doing his thing too. So those losses are no big deal at all. And the kid was like probably like early 20s, late teens when he took those fights. Now, as far as the whole making it a dogfight thing, which obviously that's what Amil wants to do. That's what he does every fight. He is a dog. Firstly, y'all should go check out Hyder Amil's fight with my boy Devontae Sewell. Incredible fight. You just got to turn off the commentary because Gilbert Melendez was absolutely unbearably biased towards Hyder Amil in that fight. But if you turn off that commentary, you'll see a fantastic fight between my boy Devontae Sewell and Hyder Amil. Now, as far as all he's got to do is make it a brawl, I disagree. All Brito tried to do was make it a brawl. Like, dude, Brito went after Gomis. Brito was throwing fucking heat at Gomis. And if Gomis can deal with that, I think he can deal with this, man. Because I actually think Brito has top 15 potential, and I think Brito's a problem. Some people thought Brito arguably won the fight. I'm not convinced. I kind of had it first and third for Gomi. But yeah, you're right in terms of like, I do kind of wish he wouldn't give up such easy takedowns and stuff like that. But at least like, he's been in deep submission attempts in multiple fights. Like you mentioned the Jarno Aaron's fight, even that second round, the very end of the second round against Brito. But he's not like panicking. Like, right, that triangle that Jarno had, took his time. He chilled. It wasn't like, like when Feely got caught in that guillotine, and I'm not going to downplay that guillotine at all because that, I mean, it was definitely under the neck. But, Feely, I think he kind of panicked a little bit. I think Feely kind of was like, it went from 0 to 100 very, very fast, right? Whereas I think that a guy like Gomi is a little bit more composed in there, a little bit more willing to take his time. And what I really liked in that Joe Anderson fight was how Joe Anderson Brito was literally going right after Gomis. And Gomis, man, his footwork, and one little weapon he's got a teep kick that he does while going backwards, which I don't often see it. And he'll like spam like 3 in a row of them. Like, he's good at fighting long, man. I think that also the head strike defense here is just night and day. So while I respect the meal, I do think he's got to make his run now. You know, he turns 35 in May. And while some say that he's a young 35, you could say that in terms of, oh, look, he's only had 2 UFC fights, but most of his fights are wars. So he's taken his fair share of damage too. Can he make it the war that Brito wasn't able to? I'm not convinced. I think Gomi keeps it a little clean here, comes out here, wins this decision. But then again, I talked about how Gomi has more finishes on his record than decisions. He just, came to the UFC at 24, getting his feet wet, whatnot. Maybe Hyder Amil is going to leave him the openings to get that first official UFC finish. I don't count the nut shot finish. You know what I'm talking about against Yanis Gemori. I don't count that as a finish. I'm talking about a real finish. This could be the time, but either way, I'm a big Gomis here. I just think he just outclasses him. Yeah. So give me William Gomis. May the best man win. Next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Danny Barlow. He's 9-0, the left hand to God, taking on Sam Patterson, who's 12-2-1. Currently, they got it Danny Barlow minus 285. The comeback on Sam Patterson is plus 245. And this is one where I actually want to pull up the measurables because these are some big boys for welterweight. And what's funny is Patterson actually moved up from lightweight, but we're talking about Barlow, who's 6'2" with a 79-inch reach, taking on Patterson, who's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. So these are some of the longer welterweights on the roster. And obviously we know Barlow's is potentially, possibly a super prospect. We'll find out if that's really the case or not. I know people will mention the Vera Technikov fight, but I hope if they mention that, they also mention that Buddy had like a broken forearm in that fight. So to have a whole stand-up fight with just one arm, pretty damn impressive. And it's more so the potential for me on Barlow. As long as he comes up the right way, doesn't lose his head, get 150K bonus, all of a sudden he thinks he's God's gift to fighting. As long as some shit like that doesn't happen, I see a bright future for him. But with Patterson, I like Patterson a lot. Like when you look at his knockout loss, it's pretty evident two things. One, that he was cutting way too much weight to go to 155 pounds. Like, what the hell was this guy doing at 55s, man? Like 6'3", come on, bro. Yeah, that knockout loss was scary. And then he also has the tall man's defense. His chin is straight up in the air. But like, if he gets on top of Barlow somehow, if he gets under Barlow's neck somehow, all bets are off the table. Do you think it gets to that point?
That's the big question, man. But every fight starts out on the feet, and I don't know. I think it's a really tough match for Patterson here. Like you mentioned, this guy Patterson has like the definition of the tall man's defense. When I think of tall man's defense, I think of guys like Dusko Todorovic has terrible striking defense. Sam Patterson up there as well, chin up in the air, hands all the way down, just begging to be knocked out. And then you're pairing him with a guy that has the nickname of left hand to God. And the reason he has that is the dude just has so much power. So I see Barlow, touching up Patterson's chin. I think it's probably going to be early as well. But if Patterson does get this fight down to the ground, if he's able to, get Barlow down to the mat, it is going to get very interesting very quickly. Forget which fight it was, but I did see Barlow taken down and put into a ton of bad spots early on in a fight, almost submitted, was able to fight out of those bad spots. But yeah, if Patterson gets on top of this guy, Patterson's ground game is no joke, has those long arms. We could see an early Patterson submission. But like I said, the fight starts out on the feet. And Patterson, I was watching a lot of his fights, and he's not really proactively trying to get, guys down to the ground as much as I'd really like to see. And if he messes around on the feet, too much with Barlow here, I think he's getting put out. So I like Barlow by knockout. I think it comes early. But, Patterson has a path. He has a path. He just got to get it there. But yeah, I like Barlow.
Yeah, I like Barlow as well. I feel like he knows exactly what he needs to work on, right? Like, that coming into the UFC, people are going to try to test that weakness in your game. And I think that this guy with the athleticism, with the gifts, he's got a heavy sprawl, and it's only going to get better as time progresses. The get-up game is going to get better. Like you mentioned that fight where he had to overcome a lot of adversity. I like the heart he showed early on in his career, and I like the developments. It's just about, we're dealing with a guy. This is his 10th pro fight. We talk about this all the time. Guys with 10 or less pro fights are going to be making these big leaps fight to fight. So that's what I expect to see from Barlow, assuming that he's healthy here. And Patterson, I'm excited to see what he does too. Just fucking tuck that chin, my boy. If he tucks that chin, who knows? But old habits die hard. And I suspect that to be the case Saturday night. So I'm gonna also go Barlow, but like minus 285, man. Like, come on, like, if it was pick 'em or dog money, I'd be in there. But yeah, I'm good at minus 285, but I'll also go out there and pick Barlow. Hey guys, I just want to give a huge shout out to Bet 105 for sponsoring today's episode of Half the Battle. Bet 105 is an emerging crypto sports book that doesn't limit winners, has some of the best odds in the game, and has fast and easy payouts. Now, one thing I like about them is they're offering split decision insurance. If you got burnt on that Gene Matsumoto versus Rob Font fight, or that Alonzo Menefield versus Julius Walker fight last week, you lost a split decision. With Bet 105, you can get 25% of your losses back. Sounds good to me, especially with the current state of judging. You have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, is Adelaide Bird scoring? Is Chris Lee on the judge's seat? You just don't know what to expect. So at least let me get 25% of my money back if I lose a controversial split decision. Now, if you win a split decision, no big deal. You get paid. It is what it is. But if you lose a split decision, this split decision insurance will give you 25% of your loss back. Now, another cool thing that Bet 105 are doing is the parlay boost. So for every 3-leg parlay, you get a 15% odds boost. So for y'all parlay players, I mean, screw it. Go get yourself 15% better odds on your parlay. So the way to hit them up is to click the link in the description. That way you support Half the Battle when you sign up with Bet 105. So yeah, make sure y'all click that link down below. Thank you very much, Bet 105, for supporting today's episode of Half the Battle, and huge shout out to the fans. Hope y'all enjoy the betting experience that Bet 105 bring to the table. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Mario Pinto. He's 9-0, taking on Austen Lane, who's 13-5. Currently, they got it Pinto minus 500. The comeback on Austen Lane's plus 385. Have you been impressed with Pinto? What's your overall assessment of him as a prospect? And do you take anything away from Lane's last performance against Despain?
Well, what I will say about Lane is Lane's had a lot more success than I kind of thought he would in the UFC. This guy actually has a UFC win. I wasn't expecting that at all. So good on him for that. But yeah, I mean, you look at who he's had success against, and it's Rebellis Despain, who just clearly just can't stuff a takedown, just clearly can't get up, right? Not that Denise took him down in the first round, couldn't get up, got knocked out in the second. And yeah, when I was watching Pinto, I was looking for, can this guy, stuff a takedown? Can this guy scramble, get up if he does get taken down? And the answer, I think, is yes. I think his takedown defense will hold up here. And on the feet, I actually think he has solid hands. I don't think he has like a ton of power for the heavyweight division, but I'm not sure he's going to really need a ton of power to touch the chin of Lane here, who's been knocked out 5 times in all 5 of his losses, who also has that tall man's defense. I think if Lane's not having success wrestling in this fight, he's just going to be at a big disadvantage on the feet here. But geez, Pinto minus 500. We got a heavyweight debut who's fought nobody really. Minus 500. A lot can go wrong, but at the same time, stylistically, I do like this matchup for Pinto. I just really struggle to see Lane taking down Pinto for 15 minutes, and I kind of think that's his path. Or I guess landing a big shot, but I just don't think Lane's the best striker. So I think Pinto eventually touches the chin. I can see this fight playing out kind of slowly initially, but I think the chin eventually gets touched, and I think Lane gets knocked out for the 6th time in his career. So I like Pinto here, but minus 500. I think a lot could go wrong.
Yeah, listen, Pinto is a smooth operator, man. I really like him. I like his swag. I like his takedown defense. I like how he takes his time. He establishes that jab. He's got nice hands. He doesn't rush things. And he's been 5 rounds too, if I remember correctly, right?
I think so.
Am I talking out of my ass? Let me just
I know he's been 3 rounds.
Let me just make sure I didn't just make that up. So he went 5 rounds the fight right before a Contender Series. So yep, that is 100% true. I'm impressed with this guy, making your UFC debut. Let's see how you handle this test. But like, guys, like the fact that the UFC cut Rebellis Despain off 3 fights, they didn't even let him finish his 4-fight contract. That's more about what Despain did wrong than what Lane did right. Like, Lane was brought in as a sacrificial lamb. That was supposed to be Lane's last UFC fight. Saturday night, it's going to be Lane's last UFC fight. But like Despain, when he first came to the UFC, got that big knockout, people were thinking, hey, this is the next Francis Ngannou. And then, you know what I'm saying? 6 takedowns later. And what I mean by that, 1 takedown each round, couldn't get back up. and now he's gone, So I'm not buying into Austen Lane being some new man or any bullshit like that. I think that's fake news. I think that Pinto can stuff, and I think Pinto can knock this man unconscious. So I'm gonna go with that result as well. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Chepe Mariscal. He's 17-6, taking on Ricardo Ramos, who's 17-6. Oh, both 17-6. Chepe minus 450, Ramos plus 350. So Chepe is one of these guys. I know he's new to the UFC, but he's not new to the fight game. This guy's truly paid his dues on his regional scenes, fought all kinds of guys, beat current UFC guys on the regional scene, beat fucking Yusuf Zalal. Like, he's beat some real people. He's lost to some real people like Joe Anderson, Brito, brutal KO, by the way. But yeah, he's been in there with real people. So now he's one of those guys that we talk about. He crushed the grapes. Now he's drinking the wine in the UFC, and all those dues he's paid up until now are paying off. Because listen, man, I mean, look how many pro fights this man has, and 23 pro fights. About to make his, about to have his 24th pro fight here. And the thing with Ricardo Ramos, he's what I like to call a talented flake. I mean, he's good everywhere. His ground game's solid. He's got some nasty knockouts on the feet. How many spinning back elbows knockouts does this dude have? Like, when he's on, he's on. But like, when he faces any kind of semblance of adversity, he just kind of checks out. And this is not something new, man. This has been going on since day one. I mean, I remember when he was on, I believe, Dana White looking for a fight, right? And Dana sitting front row. And I think the opponent he was in there with was this kid from Team Alpha Male named Manny Vasquez, right? And they were going there to scout Ricardo Ramos. And Ricardo Ramos gets tapped out in the first round. And then I think he beat the Alfred Kashakian guy, the guy that Sean O'Malley knocked out on Contenders, and then they bring him into the UFC, right? So, like, they had their eyes on Ramos for a long time. He's a very, very talented kid. He's just super inconsistent. And when fights get tough, I mean, I'm not saying he's a Cody Brundage or anything like that. Let's not disrespect Ricardo Ramos, but he's maybe a couple tiers above the heart of Cody Brundage, but he ain't no lion heart. And I don't mean Anthony Smith. I just mean that term, he doesn't quite fit the mold of that term is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I think Mariscal probably bullies him a little bit. Like, that pace Mariscal pushed in that last one against Damian. I know he missed weight by a mile, but goddamn, that was a serious fucking pace. And this guy's found a way to use judo throws in MMA, which is really interesting. Even injured Jack Jenkins with a big throw. And I just feel like Chepe is starting to put it all together, but the price sucks. And from time to time, Ramos will impress. And some of the not best guys in the world do have wins over Chepe, like Sean Soriano, who's a coach now. And no disrespect to him, just speaking facts. So, you have to speak in these terms when we're dealing with an almost minus 500, right? But at the end of the day, I just do think the heart, the will, the determination will be the difference. Kind of like a lot of these fights we've been talking about, So yeah, give me a Chepe.
Yeah, I look at this line and it's like, I think skill for skill, like, these two are, line up a lot closer than the
Agreed.
minus 450 indicates, but it's the intangibles. It's the cardio, the durability, the heart for me. And yeah, Ricardo Ramos, I think all the skills are there. Like, I think his striking's pretty good. He's a BJJ black belt, very good, really wherever the fight goes. But when the going gets tough, I kind of worry about him, and I think the going will get tough here. I was going back and watching that Damon Jackson fight, which, by the way, should have probably been stopped on several different occasions. I was thinking to myself, man, if Chepe gets on top of Ramos and is landing these big shots, I can almost guarantee that he's going to look for the door, look for a way out. This guy Ramos has been finished 5 times, 3 submission losses, 2 knockout losses. I think this is going to be a dog fight, and I think really only one of these guys are dogs, and that's Chepe. Chepe's the definition of a dog. May not have the most skill in the world, but he's made so many improvements throughout his career. He can kind of do it all at this point. But yeah, has a ton of heart, cardio, pressure, pace, and I think all that's going to break Ramos down the stretch. So I think Chepe is going to get Ramos out of there round 2, round 3. But yeah, it's a wide line. If Ramos shows up, he could be live. Like, he has power, sneaky submission game, but I got to go with Chepe here. I got to go with the guy with the heart. And yeah, I agree. I think Ramos does have another notch or two above like the Brundage heart, but I still do question the heart of Ramos as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Mariscal dangle off that neck either. So yeah, let's see what happens now. Next up, In the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between John Castaneda. He's 21-7, taking on the ultra vet Douglas Silva de Andrade, who's 29-6. Currently, they got a Castaneda minus 300. The comeback on Silva de Andrade plus 250. Normally, I'm not interested in John Castaneda at minus 300 versus any man on the UFC roster. However, my boy Douglas de Silva is 39 years old, going on 40. Got out volumed by Miles Johns. One does not simply get out volumed by Miles Johns, and that happened to my boy. How do you see this fight going down?
Yep, I think it's probably the end of the road or getting really close to it for Douglas Silva de Andrade. The dude's turning 40 years old in June, and we see it in like the higher weight classes, right? Like we'll see heavyweights, light heavyweights, middle. We just saw Jared Cannonier go out there at 40, 41 years old and look good, but we don't typically see it in these lower weight classes, the flyweights, bantamweights, featherweights, lightweights, and we clearly do see. Yeah. There's tons of examples. But yeah, we see a clear decline, I think, in Douglas Silva de Andrade. And to be honest, looking throughout Douglas Silva de Andrade's career, he never really had like the best minute winning ability. He's not really a high volume striker. He won't really go out there and wrestle. But what he does do, what he always has done really well, is just he hits like a truck for the division. This dude has like over 20 knockouts in his career. But now, I really do think he's slowing down. The Stamen fight, I'm not convinced he won that fight. He got dropped in the third round by Stamen, lost that third round badly. The first two rounds were close, but I did slightly give it to Stamen there.
Well, real quick, you were at that fight, right?
I was at you. We were both at that fight. Yeah.
Dude, live in the arena, we all thought that Stamen won. So when I tweeted, I thought that everyone was shitting on me because I guess at home they saw it differently. But I'm glad you can back me up since you were there. Live, the arena, we thought Stamen won that fight.
Oh, it must have been because of like the commentary then at home. Could be, some bad commentary. But yeah, I thought he lost the Stamen fight, and that's not it's not the worst loss, but also not the great loss. And then like I said, the Johns fight just didn't do much. So with Castaneda, he's not a guy I would want to lay minus 300 on. He's typically a guy I'd want to bet like as a dog, but in this matchup, he's the younger guy. I think he's going to have, double the volume here. The better cardio, all the wrestling upside. I think I think this is his fight to lose, quite frankly. As long as the chin holds up, he should be able to win this quite comfortably over the course of 15 minutes, I'm thinking. So I like John Castaneda, and I think he wins by decision.
Yeah, the thing with a guy like John Castaneda is to give him issues, you have to push a serious pace on him to where he hits that wall, right? Like you look at fights like the Daniel Willie Cat Santos fight, which I actually bet Willie Cat in that fight. I don't remember the odds. What was it, like plus 180, 85, something? Anyways, he was able to really, he overcame some fucking adversity, but he really pushed that pace on Castaneda, which we know he doesn't like historically. You even look at that Muin Gaffarov fight. Man, I thought Gaffarov was close in that second round. I thought that Castaneda was hitting that wall again. And then Castaneda, you got a second win in that third. Got to give him big credit for that. But like you look at that last fight against Daniel Marcos, when someone can push that pace on Castaneda, they tend to go out there and win. The issue is my boy Douglas de Silva, it's moment based. Not too much in the in-betweens, and that's where Castaneda is going to be able to get off on jabs, get off on calf kicks, maybe not actually takedowns, but feint the level change just to give him that look, mix things up, throw some high kicks in there, and you just have to be worried about what's coming back at you. But the good news is that, like, Silva ain't going to come out here and put up 100 significant strikes or anything crazy like that. I mean, like I said, one does not simply get out volumed by Miles Johns. My boy Douglas de Silva is 39 years old now. And although I've never been that high on John Castaneda, and in normal terms, I would take a plus 250 over him any day. But I just don't think that Silva can get him to that wall. I don't think he pushes a high enough pace for that. So for that reason, I got John Castaneda. Probably a decision, but, when guys are approaching 40, that's when they start to hit the deck. And my boy Silva has been dropped a few times in, some of these most recent fights. So, yeah, let's see what happens. But I'm going to go John Castaneda as well. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Lucas Almeida. He's 15-3, taking on Danny Silva, who's 9-1. Currently, they got a Danny Silva minus 210. The comeback on Lucas Almeida is plus 180. Interesting fight because with Danny Silva, I think he's very, very talented. but I also think he's very green. Like, if you watch that Coolabah fight, and first of all, I don't know if you're one of these people, so I apologize in advance. This is nothing personal, but people calling that fight a robbery, like, what? How the fuck was that shit a robbery? Like, only one guy was close to finishing that fight, and that was Danny Silva. Like, but I'm gonna get to my criticisms in a sec, but I want to give this kid his flowers first. Like, bro, that fight against Coolabah, he was rocking him all over the place. He had a deep locked in choke early in that first round, which was like, damn. And I like this kid's boxing for MMA. I like the fact that he's got serious footwork. He's cutting angles out there, and he's using his boxing to transition to his wrestling too, which I haven't seen a wrestler boxer since back in the day. Like, back in the day, the wrestler boxers would be guys that would just wing overhand rights and, then go for a blast double. Whereas this dude, Danny, is establishing his jab. Like I said, cutting angles, like real footwork for a boxer for MMA. Like, I think he's got a lot of potential. Now, the kind of issues I had in the Coolabah fight was how, like, watch that first round, right? The first 2.5 minutes of that round are like, wow, Danny Silva looks like a future champion. Wow, if Danny Silva keeps this up, this is about to be a 10-8 round. And then he just takes his foot off the gas and lets Coolabah like right back into that fight. Now, obviously, the main damage caused in round one was by Danny Silva. So by default, you have to give him that round. But just saying, when you observe things like that and you think about how that could play out going forward, I can't have the guy I'm betting on taking breaks in the middle of fights, especially with someone as dangerous as Almeida. Now, the thing with Almeida, it's now or never with him, right? He's about to turn 35. And good for him on that last fight against Kuwamba, which, by the way, I made one of the worst bets I've ever made in all my years watching the sport, betting on Kuwamba in that spot. But shout out to Lucas getting back on track there, because that was the fourth fight of his deal. And had he lost, he would not be in the UFC right now. So I was very happy and heartwarmed by the fact that, not heartwarmed by the fact that, he got a new contract now. He gets to fight again. So yeah, Lucas with the Muay Thai, heavy leg kicks, big power in his hands, but he's a bit on the stationary side. The takedown defense isn't the best. So you do have to favor Danny Silva here. It's just, I need Danny Silva to not take breaks in fights. I need Danny Silva not to eat so many shots by bums like Angel Pacheco. So those are my concerns. You're eating Angel Pacheco shots. I don't want you eating a Lucas Almeida shot on the chin, So that's enough to make me pass at -210. I'll sit back, see where both these guys are at, see if, because that last fight with Silva, where I was criticizing him for looking like a world beater the first 2.5 minutes, and all of a sudden he's coasting. That was also his UFC debut. Now he's got his feet under him a bit. Let's see if he comes back better in that sophomore appearance. So I am going to favor him, just not interested at betting him at this price.
Yeah, no, it's I like Danny Silva. I like Danny Silva as a fighter quite a bit. I like this guy's style. And it was weird. It was weird seeing him go out there, look incredible, and just kind of slow down a little bit as the fight goes on, because that's not who I think Danny Silva is. Who I think Danny Silva is a guy that can go out there and just push a hectic pace over the course of 15 minutes and get you out of there late if need be. But yeah, I like Silva here, and I like Silva in this matchup. I got to favor Silva in this matchup. I just think he has more ways to win in this fight. I like the volume on the feet. I like the way that he can mix in takedowns. And, Lucas Almeida, although he's a black belt himself, both guys are black belts. Anytime I've seen Almeida taken down and on his back, it hasn't looked great. And I'm not talking about just the Pat Sabatini fight, because that was obviously not a great look, but it's Pat Sabatini. We can forgive him. I'm talking about like in other fights, like anytime he gets taken down, he's getting put into bad spots. He's getting held on the ground. And, Danny Silva.
It's like life alert. Help. I've fallen and can't get up.
Exactly. He's one of those, man. But yeah, it's just bad. And yeah, Lucas Almeida, 50% takedown defense. I feel like Silva can kind of, strike a little bit, mix in the takedowns. And I feel like if he can't get on top of Almeida, he can absolutely do some serious damage here, potentially even finish the fight. So, but yeah, Silva, I agree. I think he's green. I think he's very hittable, but hey, so is Lucas Almeida. I think this has potential. I would say this has potential to be fight of the night if Haqparast Ribovics wasn't on the card. But yeah, I think this is going to be actually one of the better fights on the card. I think it's going to be violent. I think it's going to be fun, but give me the guy that has just more ways to win, whether that's a Danny Silva volume-based decision, whether that's him touching the chin of Almeida, whether that's him taking this into deep waters, getting the fight down to the ground and finding a sub on the mat. So I like Silva here, but it is a hefty price to pay.
I'm looking at the over 2.5. It's plus money, plus 105. I don't know if that tempts you. but just throwing that out there. You expect a 3-round war. Get a little
Yep.
plus money on the over. Let's see. Watch someone get starched early now, but yeah. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Andrade Lee. Check out her record: 13-10. And I'm not one to make fun of fighters' records, but do you know what her record used to be? She went from being 11-2 to 13-10. 11-2 to 13-10. If that is not a decline, maybe someone smarter than me can let me know what a decline is, because that is the definition of a decline. I believe she's 2-8 in her last 10. Now with JJ 13-7, well, not the best record we've ever seen, but like, it's not like she was like 11-2 and now she's, what was it, 13-10 now? Yeah, it's not like that at all. Like, so anyways, Andrea Lee's completely washed up. JJ Aldrich, how old is JJ? Let me take a quick look. JJ is 32. Okay. How old's Andrea? Because Andrea's 36. Damn. I didn't realize. Yeah. Well, it makes sense now. Look, just give me the younger girl that's closer to her prime. Both just as experienced as each other. So it's not like, one of these girls is on her second UFC fight and the other one's like a 10-fight vet. Nah, like both these women have been around the block for a long time, but one's completely washed up and one has a little bit left in the tank. So give me the girl that has a little bit left in the tank, and that is JJ Aldrich. So JJ Aldrich via decision.
Yep. I mean, if this fight was a couple of years ago, Andrea Lee plus 180, insta-bet. I mean, JJ Aldrich shouldn't really be minus 210 against anybody not named Liang
By
Na.
a couple of years ago, when do you mean exactly? Because this skid has been going on since
Give me the 2021 Andrea Lee.
Okay.
Plus 180. Okay. There we go. But no, I think she's on a big decline, man. I mean, losing to Viviane Araújo, Macy Barber, Natalia Silva, those aren't bad losses. And even Miranda Maverick's not a bad loss. Even De La Rosa, it's not the best loss in the world, but it's not horrible. But it's how she's looking in both the De La Rosa fight and the Maverick fight. You shouldn't be getting outlanded at distance against Miranda Maverick 2-1. Like, she got outlanded 60-30 on the feet. I'm like, what's going on? Like, you should be very competitive on the feet against Miranda Maverick. Miranda Maverick typically looking to take you down, and then you shouldn't be getting outlanded at distance by Montana De La Rosa of all people either. So not only is she on a 5-fight skid, not only is she like 2-8 in her last 10 fights, but
and not only did she marry a Nazi and then rebound with Tony Kelly. Keep going.
Oh, yeah, no, we could just keep going on and on, but yeah, the pick's it's got to be JJ Aldrich. I think even like it should be a good matchup for her. Andrea Lee. I don't see her taking down Aldrich. Aldrich actually has good takedown defense. She's able to stuff takedowns from Blanchfield. Julian Robertson keep it on the feet in those fights. Should be able to keep it on the feet here. And then, like I said, if you're getting outlanded 2-1 at distance by Maverick, outlanded by Montana De La Rosa, I think a striker the caliber of JJ Aldrich should be able to go out there and just win the fight. So yeah, I think Andrea Lee goes on a 6-fight skid. 6-fight skid.
One could argue there's value here. Hear me out. Do you remember the price Aldrich was? Do you remember the price Aldrich was against the Queen of Violence, Lipsky? Off the top
she's
of your
like
head.
minus 300, I think.
Yeah, like -3, -4.
Oh.
Now she's only -210 against someone significantly worse in terms of current form. Just saying. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got an absolute banger. Now, people are asking, why is this fight early on the card? I don't know the exact reason, because when you got Cody Brundage as your co-main and this is the second fight of the night, maybe we got to question a few things. But if I had to take a guess, Brady, I'd say maybe they're like, this is a sick fight. Let's get the fans to tune in early. Let's get the fans to tune in right away so they watch the whole card. That's the only explanation I have. Now, Charles Johnson, he's 17-6, taking on Ramazan Timurov, who's 18-2. Currently, they got it. Johnson -125. The comeback on Timurov is +105. Charles Johnson's been running his mouth because actually, I know it says Temirov there with a T-E-M-I, but I've actually seen other places write it Temu, like T-E-M-U, and Temu, like that store that you get a bunch of cheap stuff. Yeah. So Johnson said that this is a Oompa Loompa from Temu, and that he's talking like he's gonna walk through this guy. So Johnson's got to back that up. Now, to his credit, Timurov is only 1-0 in the UFC, but he's also had vast experience outside the UFC. So how do you see this going down? Because look, Charles Johnson has paid his dues. No questions asked, has overcome skids. Now he's on a win streak. Former LFA champ. Like, he's starting to find his feet in there. But this kid Timurov brings rare power that you don't often see in the flyweight division. And ironically enough, on the same card as Manel Kape, who also does the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great fight, man. I'm looking forward to this one. For this fight here, I think it's one of those classic, minute winner versus moment winner type fights. Because when you look at Temurov and a lot of his fights, there's just a lot of inactivity, a lot of movement, a lot of nothing really happening the entire time, and then he'll let off with a big combination, putting 1,000% into all of his shots. And the dude has a ton of power for the flyweight division, but I'm not sure at the UFC level he'll be able to win a lot of minutes. And maybe he won't need to. Maybe he can go out there and knock out a ton of guys. But we don't see flyweight knockouts happen all that often. He was able to knock out Vergara, but if he's able to knock out Charles Johnson, that's a huge feather in his cap, because Charles Johnson never been knocked out. Only seen him dropped once against Maxim. He was able to actually win that fight, showed a ton of heart, recoverability in that fight. So, yeah, I think Timorov's going to have some success early, maybe landing some big shots early. But if he's not able to get Charles Johnson out of there in that first round or hurt him very badly, I just see Johnson kind of pulling away, just kind of doing more, showing the better cardio, showing the better well-rounded MMA game as well. So I like Johnson here, but Timorov's he's a scary dude. This guy has a ton of power. But give me the UFC veteran here and Charles Johnson to get it done by decision. I don't think it's going to run through Temurov. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. I think a pick'em does make some sense. I think both guys have ways to win this fight, but I like the minute winning ability of Johnson, the cardio, the volume especially, and that UFC experience he brings to the table. So I like Johnson here by decision. Could even be a split depending on whether the judges favor the volume of Charles Johnson. Do they favor the couple big shots of Temurov? I think we have a close fight on our hands here.
I'm actually going on the opposite side of you. Now, I think you brought up great points. The UFC experience, that has to be accounted for. And he's fought legitimate guys, win, lose, or draw, right? And the guy also has a 7-inch reach advantage, I believe a 5-inch height advantage. So Temurov is going to have to really close distance here. And one thing about Temurov, he goes balls to the wall. Like in that fight against CJ Vergara, we remember the 3 knockdowns and the brutal finish, but he was also swinging at air a lot. And that's something I am worried about here. But man, when he connects, when he connects, you don't often see guys at 125 pounds connecting like that. And I've seen Johnson rocked on multiple occasions. I'm not just talking about that Azat Maxim fight, which shout out Maxim for getting that early knockdown, and not shout out Maxim for costing me a bet after dominating the first round. Shout out my boy Cody Durden. People only remember the grappling. What about Cody Durden lighting up Johnson on the feet at times? I know he landed some big shots on Johnson that Johnson felt. This kid Timurov hits different. And again, I do have to proceed with caution because he's only 1-0 in the UFC, right? And experience and paying dues is a very, very big thing to me. But I think this kid's paid his dues outside the UFC. Like when you look at his only losses, it's like Tagir Ulanbekov, who could potentially challenge for a title one day, and then some other badass Russian, and that's it. And then besides that, he's on a massive streak. He's gone the distance. He's stuffed takedowns. And then obviously he's brutally, viciously knocked guys out, which is, again, a rare quality at this weight class. So I think that I could be wrong. Maybe this is a generic way to look at it, that you come in pre-fight on an underdog bet on Timurov, and you see, maybe he has a big first round. You see him huffing and puffing. Charles Johnson starts to pick things up. Maybe that makes sense for a live bet. I mean, like at the end of that Brendan Allen and Fluffy first round, it ended with Brendan Allen on top of Fluffy in full mount. And it looked like, damn, Brendan's about to get this. And yeah, and I know a lot of people live bet Fluffy in that spot. It was still minus money because people already know about the weaponized cardio, but it went from like what, minus 300 to minus 330, like, closing odds, to like minus 130, minus 145 to bet him in between rounds. So I'm just saying, in this case, in Charles' case, you might get dog money between rounds. So if you think that, or if you see from the eye test that Timurov is, he blew his load early, whatever the case may be, maybe look at Charles live. I'm gonna roll the dice. I'm gonna roll the dice on Timurov here. it wouldn't be anything big because, again, I like to really only bet on guys that are proven. But I do recognize the talent. I do recognize the skill. And I also recognize the arrogance coming from Johnson. And I hope Johnson shaves that goddamn thing off the back of his head from one bald man to another. So I'm gonna go Timurov to win this fight. Now, last but not least, kicking off the card in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Montana De La Rosa. She's 13-9-1, taking on Luana Carolina, who's 11-4. Currently, they got it Luana Dread Carolina minus 145. The comeback on Montana De La Rosa is plus 125. Well, we've mentioned De La Rosa earlier in the breakdown. What do you think about this fight, by the way?
I'm not that excited for this one, to be honest, but I think Luana Carolina is kind of underrated. Like, I think, she was an underdog against Ivana Petrovic. I think people, typically do counter out. She's a big underdog against Lupi Godinez, where Godinez took the fight up a weight class on short notice. I think she's underrated. I think she's good. I think she's getting better. And her takedown defense is actually pretty good. Her ground game is not the best. Like, if she does get taken down, she can get stuck on her back. But in terms of taking down Luana, it's not easy to do. And yeah, I think her striking's pretty solid. Very long, very rangy, good volume in the striking there. So I guess to me, it all comes down to whether or not Montana De La Rosa is able to get on top. If she's able to get on top, she probably wins minutes. But if she's not able to get the takedown, I think Luana Carolina is going to make it look pretty easy on the feet, to be honest. But yeah, I want nothing to do with this fight. I lean Carolina. I think she can stuff those takedowns, be the better striker here. But in my opinion, this has just split decision written all over it. So yeah, Carolina's the pick, but not a ton of confidence in it.
The fact that Montana De La Rosa has been in the UFC since 2017, credit to you, girl. Like, I would have never expected that because there's nothing that really like stands out. There's no It's just, some grappling upside, but like when we say some grappling upside, I'm not talking about no Virna Janjidoba or any shit like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just her, like, Montana's strength is her grappling, but what level is her grappling truly? That's kind of what I'm saying here. When you look at the numbers, which I'm looking at now, people always ask me why I look to my right as if I'm having a conversation with someone. I'm not. My screen is here with all my numbers. And Luana Carolina has her pretty much outmatched in almost every statistical area that matters to me. I mean, double her up on strikes, way more accurate, better defense, and then on the feet, and then grappling wise, 74% takedown defense. I think it's Luana Carolina's fight to lose, man. I just think that, simply put, Montana De La Rosa is a fight or two away from retirement, whereas if Luana Carolina can keep up the streak she's currently on, hey, 3 more wins, you could get a top 15 showdown. I believe that. Like, Luana Carolina has paid motherfucking dues, bro. You cannot debate that. So is Montana, but the difference being is I haven't seen that evolution and big time progression in Montana De La Rosa's game or anything like that. People will bring up, oh, Montana gave Tatiana, the toughest fight Tatiana's had, prior to Zhang Wei Li. But it's like, Tatiana hadn't fought since the Exodus when that fight happened. Like, Moses parted the Red Sea more recently than the last time Tatiana fought, So that's really like a non-factor, and she still got finished. So yeah, I got Luana Carolina here. Probably unanimous decision. So yeah, that's gonna be my pick. Well, my friend, we did it. It's going down this Saturday night live at the Apex. The fans can follow you on Twitter at DFS_numbers, on YouTube at DFS by the numbers. Plus, y'all got to check out my boy's show, Stats Diggers with Uncle Weezy. It's a required reading for Sunday nights. I purposely didn't listen this week because I didn't want to hear your take, so we could come in here, on a fresh slate. But man, I was telling Brady off air, I think for his Stats Digger breakdown for the Australia card, the Izzy Nasrat one, dude, I was laughing my fucking balls off listening to that show, man. So y'all got a great thing going on. I love also that, you're releasing it independently in-house. You don't got, anyone, taking advantage of you, anyone bullshitting you, anyone playing the kind of fucking games that I know these people play because I've been around the game a long time. So I have massive respect for you, for Uncle Weezy. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now on Half the Battle, Brady.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. It was a fun show. It was a pleasure to finally be on. And yeah, it's gonna be a good night of fights. I think we're gonna get some violence. Like I said, no more trash gloves. No more trash gloves ever again. We're finally back. Feels good.
Yeah, we truly are. To the fans, thank y'all so much for all your support. You know, it truly means a lot. Please smash the like button, hit the subscribe, leave me a comment, share if you feel so inclined. Also, I dropped a video the other day entitled, Did Henry Cejudo Quit? I know. The title alone makes you think a certain thing, but do not judge a book by its cover. I implore you all to hear me out. It's only a 15-minute video. Just hear what I have to say. Leave me a comment if you agree, if you disagree, if you think there's certain things I missed, whatever the case may be. But just check it out and let me know what you think. And yeah, I'm gonna be back next week for the next card. Y'all already know the deal. Make sure y'all hit up my boy Brady. You can follow me at Best Fight Picks on Twitter, at Half the Battle Pod on Instagram, Half the Battle Podcast on TikTok, Half the Battle Official on YouTube, all the spots. You know, just type in Half the Battle, you'll find me. So thank y'all so much for your support. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.